about some techniques and thoughts to do with what's sometimes called glide guitar. It's kind of, I guess it really all stems from that sort of Kevin Shields thing with that type of reverb. But I think there's a lot of, I don't know, misconceptions, I guess, maybe, to do with the sound, like it's like it's absolute magic, or you need a really specific gear to do it, or things like that. But hopefully this might be a bit demystifying. So I will explain how the basic ingredients in terms of gear. So I'm just straight into the amp with a bit of reverb, and I've got one delay pedal. It's an EHX Canyon, and it's in the multi mode. There's probably lots of different kinds of delay pedals that have this, but you just want something that can have a short delay time, repeat the note without any decay, any drop in volume, and then stop. So if I just play like a quick chop sound, what you get is this. Sounds really unusual, sounds like a glitch or something. Each is the same volume, each repeat is the same volume, and they're all the same volume as the actual dry sound as well. The effect is to kind of blur where the picking is actually taking place. I find this is actually more usable than something like a reverse reverb, what lots of people seem to think it is. Maybe it is in different people doing that and it sounds really good, but I find that trickier to use, because if you have a sound where you have the dry sound and you can hear it, and then the repeats raising in volume afterwards, which is kind of what a reverse, even though it's not really reverb, it's delay, but what's referred to as reverse reverb is, you can hear like the end of the repeats because that's the loudest. And to me what that does is it makes it kind of hard to play in time for me, I guess. I find it quite off-putting. So I find it more effective, or at least easier to play, when all the repeats are just dead even volume, and then you've completely obscured where the picking is, rather than, you can still hear the individual picking. I guess it's what you want, but that's what I'm doing here, is there's no rise in volume, it's just straight. So yeah, that's the concept. You just want to get this sound, something like that, and then you'll be able to do it. And the picking is pretty much just like near enough like straight eighths, with, you know, missing out every so and so notes just to give a change in the dynamics, really. Otherwise it'd be too blocky, but you'll feel that naturally. Like if I want to dig in, it's quite dynamic. Obviously I'm playing a telly which has no like whammy bar, but a lot of the guys doing this are, you know, using Jaguars, Jazzmasters and stuff, so they're constantly kind of messing with the pitch, and it's creating a chorus effect, because every repeat that's happening is like a slightly different pitch, and when they're combining, it's giving that warm slight detune when there's two notes, you know, a few cents apart, something like that. If I really want to, yeah, it does add to the sound quite a bit, but you can kind of get that if you have a telly or something, just kind of wiggle the neck like. I sometimes want to do pitch down, so I push the neck kind of against my thigh to do that. It's very subtle, but kind of adds something. So that's kind of the basic ingredients in terms of tone. You basically just want something that can do this. There's probably a lot of ways to do it, but this way is pretty simple. I think there's a lot too much stock put in the equipment. I don't think it really makes that much difference. I actually think most of the effect comes from the kind of chord voicings and chord progression. I think, you know, I think Kevin Shields is very, people don't seem to notice how harmonically interesting the compositions actually are, just because they do have interesting effects. Everyone just assumes it's the effects, but they do. The chords and everything are really, really unique and really interesting. To me, that's where most of the feeling's coming from, rather than the effects. The effects just are kind of like the icing on the cake. Of course, most of that way of finding interesting chord progressions comes from alternate tunings, but I want to try and, you can find similar things just by figuring out certain concepts. So one thing that's really common for that kind of sound is like, the obvious one is like chords with a 9, and I'll talk about some of the voicings I was using at the start. This is pretty much, if you think C power chord, 1, 5, 1, and then this note, the 9 on top. To me, I don't know why, when I hear a chord with no third like this, I'm still hearing it as a major chord. I don't really know why. But, so the next thing that seems to happen in a lot of these kind of progressions, common in, as far as I can tell, lots of like alt rock stuff, maybe from the 90s or whatever, is some kind of suggested major chord or just a straight up major chord, followed by a chord that's not typically from that same scale. So a chord like with a root a minor third up, or a chord with the root like down a tone, or so down a whole tone. What I was doing here was basically that C kind of power chord, L9, whatever you want to call it, and I want the lowest note to go down a whole tone, but I like the top voice to go up in pitch like this. That's a nice effect when you have the lowest note going down but the top note going up, or the other way around, or the bass note moving and the top note staying still is a good one as well. What I'm playing here, it's mad that you could get away with a chord like this in something and it sounds still kind of, still has like enough darkness and edge to it. It's really like an E flat 6/9 with a 5th in the bass. I'm sure this stuff comes up in that kind of music just by virtue of them messing with the tunings. It sounds way too posh to call it that name for really what it is, but that's the effect. Especially sometimes a bass player will be playing a different line, and the chord that's created across the instruments plus a vocal melody is going to be creating something like that. That are sort of semi-related. The other one I was doing, just the A add 9, root 5th 9, major 3rd 5th, and then the same principle, chord with the root note up a minor 3rd. I like this chord. It's I guess it's a C major 9 with the root, the major 7. So here you get the effect of the bass note going up a minor 3rd, even though we've had a major 3rd in the chord, which gives it that kind of, I don't know what the word is, not uneasy, but I like the effect a lot. And the top voice is staying the same, so you've got that moving background effect. You can tell me playing without the effect, the mood is still there. The mood is really coming from the kinds of the chords. So you really don't get bogged down thinking about the equipment. It's crazy that some of the stuff people will go to emulate other people's gear, and it just doesn't really make a difference, to be honest. Some other interesting chords. Can't remember what I did, but I think it was this. Kind of sharp 11, aka Lydian sounding stuff. Here I'm thinking, as this is like the fifth of the chord in the bass, root 9, sharp 11. So yeah, I guess I'm thinking of that like an A flat Lydian type chord with a fifth in the bass, root. Very sort of, you know, dreamy kind of sounds. Optionally, you know, you've got this note on top, which is going to be the major 7 if you're seeing it as an A flat chord. I think the other sort of Lydian sounding major 7 thing I've done is maybe this. I probably wouldn't, this to me, in this context, it just sounds a bit kind of cheesy or something. I'm not too thrilled about the sound of like a straight major 7 with that voicing in this context. But it sounds, oddly enough, sounds really cool without the third, to me anyway. Seems to expose that major 7 that way, gives it a lot more edge to me. You've got the 9 there as well. Maybe a bit too pretty, but the other thing I was doing was the sharp 11 here. So you kind of got an F major 7, sharp 11. It's still got quite a lot of punch and bite because of the fifth in the bass. And if you want that close sound, which seems to sound great, like, you know, think like Alan Holdsworth reverb, volume swell, like close. Sounds really cool, like what he was doing, you know, with the reverb, but it works in this context too. Makes me think of like brightness, like a bright white colour or something. Quite tense. It makes me think of like a metallic thing. So there's just some examples of some chord voicings. I do think most of the feeling comes from the chord voicings and how they go from one to another. You can still get a really good effect even if I just played like plain bar chords. If I went major bar chord to a major chord, a minor third up, you know, you get this kind of sound. Harmonically interesting because it's not, as soon as you move it this way, it's not diatonic anymore, you know, for the flat 7 and the flat third. I think that maybe either consciously or subconsciously comes from, you know, old sort of a blues thing. Something like that kind of effect. So it's kind of got a lineage in that bluesy American thing, maybe not. But that's how I seem to think about it anyway. So hopefully that has been interesting if anyone likes those kind of sounds. I think the main takeaway is that it's really not that much to do with the equipment or even the tone really, you know. I think most of it's coming from the voicings. You can go about that different ways if you like to think about the degrees of course, you know, it's a 9 or whatever. that might help you get that sound, it might not. I think most of the people that sort of popularised these sort of sounds probably didn't know that, they were just doing it by ear, you know, with the tunings and stuff. So yeah, the gear doesn't really make that much difference, but the general gist of the sound is if you can get this, just a repeat that's at the same level as the dry sound for a short amount of time with the goal of obscuring the picking sound. Instead of hearing you'll just hear as far as the attack on the notes, it's just kind of like a blurry sound, and that'll play really nicely if you do any sort of pitch bending. It's a chorus effect, that's what's happening on a chorus effect is a delay with a bit of pitch change. So it's just kind of a natural chorus effect what you're getting. So yeah, hopefully that's useful or interesting. Thanks for watching.